like to start off today by asking everyone to think back to your favorite teacher from your grade school years. Everyone got someone? My 5th grade science teacher encouraged me to design my own experiments and helped spark a lifelong passion for science. On the other hand, there were probably some teachers so bad that you didn't learn very much at all in their class. My high school CS teacher alternated between bragging about his exploits at NASA and falling asleep. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a really controversial approach to teacher evaluations, value-added methods. By the end of my talk today, I'd like to persuade you of 3 things. First, value-added methods are highly biased and unreliable. Second, they should play only a complementary role to classroom observation in teacher evaluations. And third, individual schools or districts should be allowed to decide for themselves how best to use value-added. I'll start out by defining the qualities of a good teacher evaluation system. Then I'll go through and weigh all the arguments for and against value-added. Finally, I'll make some recommendations as to how or if value-added methods should be used in teacher evaluations. Thinking back to those 2 teachers from the start of my talk, I don't think it's a stretch to say that there was a huge difference between your experience with your best and your worst teacher. But shockingly, our current system would likely find no difference between them. Today, most teacher evaluations simply divide teachers as effective or ineffective, and only tiny proportions of teachers fail these tests, as little as 1 in 300. In all likelihood, both of those teachers you are thinking about are in this big chunk we all assume are equally good. Clearly, our current system is broken. But what should a good teacher evaluation system look like? It should be accurate, able to tell good teachers from bad. It should be unbiased. A teacher shouldn't be punished because of what students she has. And it should be useful, providing meaningful feedback. So you might be wondering how value-added methods hope to meet these goals. These methods work by generating an expected score for every student based on their previous scores. Then they statistically adjust for factors like demographics or classroom environment. To calculate the value added by the teacher, the formula subtracts the expected score from the student's actual score. The more value added, the better the teacher. Recently, more and more states have been mandating value added, which makes it even more important that we learn how effective they are. On the surface, we can see all the advantages to value added. Since evaluations are tied directly to what students are actually learning, we get an exact numerical answer as to how effective each teacher is. And all those statistical adjustments are supposed to eliminate bias and isolate the teacher's effects from everything else that goes into a score. Once we look more closely, however, we can see that this philosophically valid theory doesn't actually play out in reality. First of all, value-added can't actually isolate teachers' effects like it claims. All those clean, decisive arrows you saw earlier, they're really more like meandering, confused connections with plenty of mystery factors thrown in. For example, the formula has no way of knowing whether a child is distracted at school because of problems at home. On an even simpler level, what if there was a dog barking in the parking lot on test day? That would drag the entire class's score down. And when we look at the data, we do actually see that teachers' scores vary widely from year to year and class to class. If value added was truly reflecting only teacher quality, that would not happen. All those outside factors add up, and in the end, only about 30% of a value-added score can be attributed to the teacher herself. It's so extreme that one HISD teacher called her bonus awarded from a value-added score winning the lottery. Pascal Mauclair learned this the hard way. By all accounts, she's a passionate teacher who bravely confronted difficult obstacles. Her principal said she would put her own kids in Mauclair's class. But her students were impoverished, didn't speak English, faced troubled home lives and racial discrimination. As a result, she scored 0 out of 99 in New York State's value-added program. And the New York Post got a hold of her name and vilified her as the worst teacher in New York. So we have to ask ourselves, Are we okay with putting our trust in such an unreliable system? Even outside of their statistical validity, value-added raises another dangerous possibility, teaching to the test. In a recent survey, 85% of teachers in high-stakes test environments spent class time specifically on test prep. This takes time away from valuable skills that can't be seen on standardized tests, like research or scientific inquiry. So, as we can see, there's valid arguments on both sides of this complex debate. However, I believe that value-added is simply too biased and unreliable to be the basis of a fair and accurate teacher evaluation system. But I don't think they should be completely abandoned. So now I'm going to make some recommendations as to how we can best incorporate value-added into a holistic teacher evaluation system. First of all, value-added should be only a minor supplement, maybe 10 to 20% to a system based on classroom observations. In recent years, research groups have developed sophisticated observation rubrics that go beyond a simple thumbs up or down. For example, the Danielson Framework for Teaching has trained impartial evaluators carry out multiple observations on teachers and rate them in 32 different categories. Furthermore, combining these two approaches can help compensate for each other's failures. Value added can help make up for any personal favoritism that skews observational scores. Observation can evaluate untestable aspects of teaching that value-added methods miss. Value-added can tell teachers which topics they need to emphasize more, and observation can tell them how to improve their teaching style. Finally, I'd like to emphasize that there's no single homogeneous solution to the teacher evaluation problem. What's best for suburban Palo Alto may look completely different from inner-city Manhattan. At schools with high dropout rates, for example, principals might want to emphasize teachers' enthusiasm to help keep kids in school. On the other hand, if most kids are trying to go to college, standardized test scores are more important. In my opinion, big programs mandating value-added are unwise because they try to force diverse communities to conform to a single plan. In my opinion, teacher evaluation decisions would better be left to principals, or more practically, district superintendents. I found two possible prototypes for teacher evaluations. In Chicago, a pilot of the Danielson Framework alone was successful in identifying a meaningful proportion of bad teachers. That's a little bit more useful than 1 in 300. On the other end of the spectrum, the Impact program in Washington, D.C. combined 55% value added with 35% observation. In my opinion, the ideal solution lies somewhere in the middle. Value added should be enough to encourage teachers to promote real progress, but not enough to unfairly punish good teachers or force them to narrow their curriculum. Coming back to the case of Pascal Leclerc from earlier, if value added had been only a minor component of her evaluation, combined with observation, her excellence as an educator could have been recognized and rewarded. And if her principal had been allowed to design her own evaluation plan, she could have chosen something that took Leclerc's extenuating circumstances into account. Finally, I'd like to ask you all to think back to that favorite teacher from the start of my talk. What was the most important thing they taught you? Maybe it was a particular learning strategy, how to write a research paper, how to deal with your peers more effectively. Would some state agency be able to see that on a test score? Probably not. It wouldn't be fair to that teacher, and it wouldn't weed her out from all the other mediocre teachers out there. For this and all the other reasons I've outlined, I believe that value added should not be the main component of teacher evaluations. In conclusion, the state of teacher evaluation in this country is unacceptable, but there is reason to be optimistic. More and more states and schools are working towards expanding their evaluations in some form, and even if it's not perfect at first, the only way we can go is up. We're beginning to make progress to improve teacher quality across the board. By optimizing teacher evaluations with the reforms I've proposed, we can begin to hope for a brighter future for American students.
So questions for Ellen and the value of value add.
Just in general, is value-added methods, are they used in many grades of schools, or in elementary schools or high schools in particular?
They seem to be more commonly used in middle schools and high schools for the simple reason that in elementary schools there aren't as many previous years to base the student's score on, and also because it's difficult to design a standardized test that more accurately measures their performance.
Yeah, so how does that expected score work? Like when you calculate the one to start and then calculate value added?
Well, they start out with the expected score that is simply the student's score from the previous year. Like if the test is graded on the same scale, it would be exactly the same, or they would adjust it to be the right scale. And then they put in various factors for demographics, and they have various proxies that they use to try to determine whether the student is low income or what kind of background they come from.
Any other questions? Thank you again, Ellen.